In today's episode, we're going to cover a topic that you guys have been asking about a lot, investing. We've got a great guest for you guys. I'm excited to bring her in, and we're going to talk about how to build your investment empire. If you've been wondering, how do I get started building my investment portfolio, you've got to listen to this episode. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Agent Bridge podcast. I'm Brandon Baca, Marine Corps veteran and 15-year realtor, broker, and coach.
And I'm Marl Hessen. I'm a Fortune 500 C-suite executive, real estate investor, and entrepreneur.
The Agent Bridge is the proven path to real estate success without the burnout. Guys, I'm excited. We've got a special guest today. We're going to talk about investing from someone who's done a lot of it. How are you going to build your investment empire, your investment portfolio? So we're going to talk to someone who has done it and can give you all the tips and tactics and strategies you need to build your investment portfolio, to build your investment empire. As always, please take some time to like and subscribe. We've got a great audience building on YouTube. We'd love to see you guys there. So please do us a favor. Also, please leave us a comment. Tell us what you liked about the episode. Let us know if you have any questions, and that helps us build future content.
Yeah,
for you guys.
You left a comment on the last episode. That was great. We got to engage with you. We'd like to do more of that, so leave a comment. Exactly.
So I'm going to introduce our guest here. So Katie Linkus with Freedom Investment Group. Katie combines her experience as a successful commercial and residential real estate investor with over 10 years of experience. Stepping all over myself today. 10 years of experience as a registered nurse to bring a caring, compassionate, and knowledgeable approach to her business relationships. In 2017, Katie and her husband Clay incorporated Freedom Investment Group. As they increased their real estate investment portfolio, they realized the extreme need for quality property management. Freedom Investment Group strives to meet that need for property owners and tenants across East Tennessee. In 2019, becoming a licensed affiliate broker with Ten Oaks Real Estate became the clear choice as the next step in Katie's career based on the values and leadership of the Ten Oaks brokerage. This move has allowed Freedom Investment Group to expand their management offerings to the investment community across Tennessee, and also Freedom Investment Group Solutions, FIG Solutions, was founded in early 2020 by Clay and Katie. They realized there was a housing crisis related to affordability and access. Committed to serving the local community, FIG Solutions is a nonprofit ready to be a part of the answer, whatever the problem may be. FIG Solutions provides rent relief, deposit assistance, and transitional housing. The organization believes in partnering with other community agencies that have the same goals, combining our efforts for the greatest outcomes possible. Katie and her husband Clay have 6 children and reside in Lenoir City, Tennessee. Did I say Lenoir City right?
You did.
Okay, good. Tennessee's always weird. You never know how things are going to be pronounced. We also have a Santa Fe. Yeah. We have a Lebanon. So you never know how.
You got to say that one right. Welcome, Katie.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you.
Thank you. It's exciting to be here, an honor and privilege.
Awesome. Well, we get this question a lot. So, it feels like there's a ton of Instagram influencers out there talking about you need to get into investing, and here's how you use other people's money to get into investing. And there's always like a lot of talk about this. As this younger generation has started coming into real estate, that's a question I get a lot as a broker.
Like 5 minutes after they get their license. 5 minutes after
they get there, yeah, they're like, hey, how do I get started investing? That's really what I want to do. I'm like, okay, well, this might take some time. Everybody kind of takes a microwave approach to building their investment portfolio. But I say, a lot of times I say, hey, look, let's figure out how to make money first. And then we can start working on, investment as a part of your legacy building. But I would love, can you guys give us a breakdown of what you're working with right now in your real estate investment portfolio? So houses and property management and all that stuff.
Yeah, sure. So we started, as you mentioned, we started 2017, early 2018 in investing, and pretty quickly built our portfolio to about 300 doors. So going into 2020, we owned 300 doors, and we didn't syndicate. I think that's important to understand. A lot of investors own a lot of doors because they're a part of a syndication. So they own a small or large percentage of that portfolio. But we really built this brick by brick, one by one, and have full ownership of all 300 doors.
So for
So
those people who don't understand what syndication is that like the real estate investment trust things, like a kind of like a hedge fund for real estate?
sort of. So you'll have a group um, that uh, builds the funding through their relationships. You
Right.
usually have an asset manager. And so you'll have some people who have a 2% interest, some people who have a 40% interest, and the return is just equal to your invested interest. And so, the buying power is oftentimes larger because you have more people involved. It just depends on, what you want. How do you want to approach
Okay.
your real estate investing?
But you built this one purchase at a time up to 300 houses.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is
Yeah. We have a
crazy.
mix of we have a pretty large single family portfolio in
Okay.
there, and then we have multifamily. But our biggest multifamily is, um, I think our biggest multifamily is only 8 units,
Okay.
and then we have a couple mobile home parks that we own. So those are single. Our largest mobile home park is 17 lots.
Okay.
So all of those doors equal our 300.
Right. So it's a mixture of single family, multifamily, and mobile home stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
Gotcha. And is it currently at 300?
No, no. So 300 was where we were going into 2020. And
Okay.
then through at the end of 2020 into 21, we sold about 50 doors.
Okay.
We're around 250, 260 now.
That's still an incredible amount of that's a lot of real estate.
Yeah.
And that's what most people would dream of. But I would imagine that it's probably not as easy as people think to own because you're doing property management too, right? So
Yeah.
so you're managing properties that aren't yours. So you have 250 to manage yourself, right? And then you have other doors that you manage for other people.
Right. Yeah. So through buying, we obviously created a lot of partnerships in the community and met a lot of investors. And kind of the common theme, we got a lot of our real estate deals because we got them at the prices we got them at because they were under rented, lots of deferred maintenance, not
Mm-hmm.
well managed. And so really saw a need for management on the outside. We had built the foundation for management for our own portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so going into 2020, pre-pandemic, we kind of made the decision that year we were going to focus on expanding to fee-based management and managing for other investors. That was probably divine because through 2020, investing came to a screeching halt, at least for us, as the year progressed. And so we really focused on management and grew our management portfolio to over 1,000 doors by the end.
Okay, so the 1,000 doors, that is on top of the 250.
No, that includes our 250.
Okay, so 1,000 total.
Yeah, 1,000 total.
And that's a monster thing to manage. I mean, that we're talking about, you've got staff and people that were working full time and full time maintenance men and all that stuff. So it's a huge organization.
Yeah, and what's funny is when we started investing in real estate, we had made the decision that we wanted to, start creating a legacy and get out of jobs. Clay had a very successful career in consulting, but that's not what we wanted to do forever, and really
Mm-hmm.
wanted to, you know, determine our own schedule and all those things. But we didn't want like a storefront or a business that we had to be present at and had to always be there. And here we are with 20 employees and an office in Knoxville. I mean, it's still real estate and we have a great team. And so the great thing about real estate is it can be done from anywhere.
Right.
And so we still travel and have all the flexibility that we want to have. But it's somewhat ironic.
Well, walk me through that decision making process, because you were a nurse. You said you were a nurse for like 10 years, and then you just go, hey, I just want to be an investor. Or was it
Well,
like,
no,
okay,
there was there was a gap there where I was home with our kids.
okay.
So I stepped down from nursing. Finally, I scaled back over years, and then kind of walked away from that. Clay was traveling during the week with his career, and then the kids got older, and I really have learned that I'm an entrepreneur, have always been. When I
Mm-hmm.
look back over my life as a child, I was making things and trying to sell things and can't sit still, always have an idea. There should always be a project. It drives people crazy. And so as our kids got older, I was always like, I did woodworking. I did like pampered chef.
Yeah.
I was like, there's got to be something. And so as the kids got older, I got super bored because they didn't need me. We were homeschooling, but then they were doing school by themselves, and
Mm-hmm.
so we actually have a really good friend that poured a lot into us. He's a very successful entrepreneur, business owner, and he partnered with us at the end of 2017 and started walking with us and in that journey of like, what do we want to do? Where do we want to go with this? So.
Okay, so you were kind of like going, okay, well, I want to do something, and you were talking with this person at the time, and he said, "Hey, let's go into business together on this and on investment type stuff."
Well, he really said, I want to help you fulfill your dreams.
Okay.
And we started exploring, okay, what does that look like? So we looked at franchises, we looked at a dry cleaner, franchise. And that's where I kind of was like, I don't want to have to be working at a dry cleaner. That's not what I want to do. And real estate had always been an interest we've been married 21 years. Even the very beginning of our marriage, we looked at wholesaling, but didn't really understand that or have the experience or the capital to do something like that.
Yeah.
So really, that summer of 2017, Clay pulled a book off the shelf that we'd read 15 years earlier, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
It's like the Bible of
Yeah, it
real
is.
estate
That's right.
entrepreneurship. And we kind of dove in. It just so happened that in September there was one of their weekend workshops that we went to, and that really started our journey down the real estate path.
So you're staying at home with the kids. You've got a mentor now, and you've decided you're going to invest after reading a book that sets off the path of many investors. And how did it start? How many did you buy that first year?
Well, before we go there, can I ask a real question? Because I think people would want to know about that relationship, because that's kind of a key piece, right? Somebody with capital that wants to help you. Like how would you, if you're an agent, like how do you position yourself to meet people like that or be around people like that? Because that was a huge piece of it, is having the capital to be able to get into this.
Yeah, that's a great question. Relationships are everything, and I think being someone that can be trusted, being someone that other people feel like they can put their confidence in, and really, I'm a person of faith. And so that was something that we were really just trusting the Lord to do. It was like, okay, if we're going to do this, help us make it happen. And we really felt like that friendship and that relationship was an answer to that. That's not maybe going to be for everybody, but that was definitely a part of our story.
Yeah.
But I think you also got to be teachable, because I think if somebody's going to invest in you and put up capital or time or whatever it is, myself, I want to know that if I'm going to spend the time telling you how to do something or suggesting you do something or funding it, I want to know that I'm going to get a good return on that. You're going to do what I said and take action and not just waste my efforts or my investment, so I think that's important.
Yeah. But back to your question, RL,
Yeah, just how did that first year go? Like, you went from 0 doors to how many that first year, and what did that look like for you and your husband?
I would say by the end of that year, we were probably at 100 or 150. I'm honestly not sure.
God, that's a crazy amount of time and energy, because that's not easy. I mean, you're buying 10 houses a month or more.
Yeah.
Or 10 doors a month, right? So
yeah. And most of what we bought was, a lot of what we bought was portfolios. So we would buy a portfolio of like 15 single family houses that someone was selling. I wouldn't say it was easy, but man, I'm like doing what I'm supposed to do. And so it was fun. It was energizing. I loved every minute of it, still do. It was constant learning. I knew nothing, and really surrounded myself with people who knew more than I did and could give me advice, and kind of help lead us. The nitty gritty of it, how we did it was, we worked with one commercial agent, one residential agent that would send us things, but then also develop some relationships with some local wholesalers that wholesaled correctly, because there is an incorrect way to wholesale. And so they were sending us deals, and I mean, I really had more deals coming across my desk than I could even look at for the most part. And that was a different time. That doesn't happen today.
So did your mentor, was your mentor your financing for the first 150, or did you have to go the traditional lending route for?
No, that was definitely what set us apart. We were able to secure a large line of credit, and we used that line of credit to pay cash for everything. We made sure that the numbers worked so that we could put money in if needed, get the property stabilized, get rents up a little bit. Nothing, we never, I don't think I've ever done more than a $200 increase on rent. And once we get stabilized, we take that portfolio to the bank and refinance it. And we were able, for the most part, able to pull our cash back out, pay off the line of credit, and just keep doing that over and over again.
Yeah. And I think that's key is how much partnerships and friendships matter, because we went the traditional lending route for the first 10 until we maxed out the amount of homes that you're literally allowed to lend on under Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. So we went the traditional lending route and then made those partnerships. And I think that's key. It's like someone who wants to get an investment, the earlier on you can meet somebody like this, the faster you're going to be able to scale, because you just can't do it through traditional lending routes for very long before you're capped out.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is just sort of establishing yourself as a reputable individual, right? People need to know, because people aren't just going to throw money at you. They need to know that you're going to carry out and that they have some amount of like a win that's coming to them out of this. So there's this sort of like synergistic relationship, and they need to know that they can trust you with their money.
Yeah. And that you're going to listen and take their advice and be coachable, as Katie said, because, just because you say you want to be an investor doesn't mean you actually know what you're doing or are going to have any follow through. So,
right. Yeah.
So back to the, buying the portfolios, and so you had some stuff, you were in contact with wholesalers that were sending you deals. You probably had a criteria for that. And then you had the portfolios. How did you even find those? Like who did you contact to even find out what stuff was available?
Well, I mean, once you start buying with cash and you close, people they want to work with you, because it got to the point, like, I mean, so I'm not an emotional anything. I don't make emotional decisions. In fact, I get a lot of flack from it, especially I have a lot of millennials in my office, and they feel a lot, and I don't really know what to do with that.
Yeah.
So, like most of the time, I wouldn't even see a property in person. I might see some pictures of it. But I would get the numbers, we would run our pro forma, and the numbers either worked or they didn't work. And if they worked, then we would go see it, do basic inspections and that kind of thing. But I mean, I bought stuff from out of state. Like, I was out of town, someone sent me something, I moved on it. I got to where the agents I was working with or the wholesalers I was working with, I trusted. And so they knew my criteria, they knew what we were looking for. And if they sent it to me, it was probably something I was going to buy, because they got to the point where they knew, like, she's not going to touch this, or this could actually be something she's interested in. So, I really just evaluated the numbers, and if the numbers worked, then we were interested.
Were you going to like investment, like gatherings, like with other investors or anything like that? No.
No, and I don't discourage that. It's just really not my personality. I love networking. I love community. It just wasn't where I put my time at that point.
Yeah.
You said your mentor was an entrepreneur. Were they in real estate as well, or that this was foreign to them?
Yeah, no, he had several large national franchises that he had pretty big ownership in. Since then, he had done some real estate prior to us. A lot of what he does is development outside of what we do together. But no, not a ton of real estate. Not as much as he does in his other industries. Yeah.
Okay. What were your, like, as you're building this, like you're 150 in your first year, what were your bigger challenges? Like, what did you run up against that you weren't expecting, or that showed up that was sort of unusual, or what were those challenges like?
I think the biggest challenge was probably contract labor. Um, at that point, like prices were pretty low. You could easily estimate what something was going to cost. We had different challenges then, but it was really getting the right people in a job that actually knew what they, could do what they said they were going to do, would finish it, would do it right. I mean, we have several properties that we've had repeat problems on. We go in and pull the flooring up and, oh, look at that scab job.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing, you know? And so that really, I think that's been the hardest thing. I mean, tenant relationships can be hard, but they're people and they want to be heard. And so if you do that, that's not that difficult to manage. Um, but I think the biggest challenge for the last 6 years has been getting people to do good work
Mm.
for an affordable price because a lot of everything we buy, yeah, I'd say everything we buy is C class probably, and that's a totally different investment than like an A class or going to be a B class, and takes a different approach, different type of work. I would have, we'd try a painting company and they'd come in and quote it like a 4,000 square foot house in Farragut. And I'm like, yeah, I can't. I wouldn't recover that for like 3 years here,
Yeah.
So those have been the biggest challenges is finding people that do good work but do it for what we can pay in order to keep rents, where they're reasonable for the community.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is this true? Because I've heard this a lot. Like it's good, fast, and cheap, right? So you can get two of the three. Is that right? Okay.
Mhm.
So yeah, you can have it good and fast, but it won't be cheap. You can
Yeah.
have it good and cheap, but it won't be fast.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's like you pick two of those three, and that's how it works. And then also, there's probably people underestimate, I think, that the amount of how much contractor relationships weigh into this, and having reputable people to do the work, consistently on time, showing up. And then also there's probably a lot of balance there because it's been and I'm not saying this to offend anybody if you're in the contractor business, but it's been my experience that a lot of times contractors get a little bit they get too many jobs going on. And so they're not intentionally not showing up. It's more like
Yeah.
their hair's on fire.
Yeah, most contractors are phenomenal people, phenomenal humans, but probably didn't have a lot of business training. And yes, they say yes, and they really want to please. They want to do a good job, but they underestimate their team not showing up. Like they're hiring somebody and they don't show up, and then that job's 2 weeks behind, and now my job's 2 weeks behind. And I mean, there's so many layers to that aren't considered. And so we actually in 2020 we got our GC license, so that we could start controlling those projects better. So we have some of them we do in house, a lot of them we have sub relationships that we pull in to projects, but we oversee and manage and control the schedule and the timeline and the budget, which
Right.
that's been a big help.
Right. I think you just generally have to have understanding for that, right? And understand it. But a lot of people get in trouble where they've got, where they come in with like a hard money loan that's running out and the contractor's not showing up on time. And then those interest rates just start hitting like crazy. And so they've lost all their profit. So it's just high risk. And people I think they underestimate the amount of time it's going to get a project done or amount of time a house is going to take to get ready. And so it eats their lunch a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Do you have, were there any places where you're just like, I want to give up? I don't, where I'm just like, I'm done with this. I'm hanging it up. I don't know how we're going to get out of this, but I'm giving up. Has that ever come up?
The closest I've been is probably this last year. We've had since January 23, we've had more evictions on just the stuff that we own. I'm not talking about like our management portfolio, but the stuff that we own. We've had higher turnover this year, and it's long-standing tenants that kind of limped through the last couple years, and we were able to work with them, and they finally hit this point where they can't anymore. And so we've had really high expenses across our portfolios, and vacancies, which means we have no income. And so not give up. There have definitely been more moments this year where we've had conversations about selling some things and overcoming that. I mean, but I think the thing, you know, we talked about expectations with contractors, but in real estate, you have to have the right, in investing, the right expectations. And I deal a lot with partners who purchase a C class but expect it to cash flow like an A class.
Mm-hmm.
And that causes a lot of problems. C class, I mean, in my experience, a C class probably isn't going to cash flow for 24 to 36 months because the rents are low and you can't increase them too high or too fast because you'll have vacancy because the neighborhood isn't going to bring the people who can pay the higher rent.
Yeah.
And you also have probably a lot of repairs, that have to be made and damages over time. And so that I think, and I'm not sure I had those expectations when we started buying. I didn't realize we did 5-year pro formas, but I don't think I mean, really 3 to 5 years is kind of seems to be like our window where we really start cash flowing on a C class.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to know when you're looking at getting into investing. You get better deals on C class, but you got to be able to carry that. C class is definitely more than any other class, I would say, is a long game. You're going to have low cash flow, but your equity growth is enormous because you can get such good deals in that market, or at least you used to be able to.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's been your experience too.
Yeah, it is. How do you look at, so everybody looks at this a little differently in the investment world. I have an opinion on it. I want to hear yours. So how do you value or look at appreciation? Do you just view it as a bonus and that when you go to sell this someday that it's going to pad your pocket, or do you actually think about that along the way? Do you factor it into your investment equation?
Yeah, we definitely factor it in, especially actually pretty strongly in the first 12 months because we want to get our cash and refinance and get our cash and be able to do it again. So if we don't have that appreciation, then we don't have the equity available to get all our cash out. So cash flow is important. The ROI is important. The DSR is important. Like all that's important when we're looking at it. But what I really think about is what's this going to be valued at once we have rents at close to market and repairs done, and can we get, is 80% of this going to cover what we paid for it so that we can pull that cash back?
What's DSR?
Debt service ratio. So it's what the bank looks at to make sure they want a loan.
Okay, gotcha.
And I think that is actually, you look at it very similarly to how I look at it. And I think that's very rare. I think a lot of times people say, well, the cash flow on it's not great, I'm not going to touch it, but they don't factor in appreciation. And if you're planning to buy and hold, you have to factor it in because there's been many properties I've bought that have really been, net zero for a long time, 4, 5, 6 years, but it appreciated a lot. And so there's value there. And that if you're not banking on that or you're not factoring it in, then you're not really doing yourself a favor.
Well, and people have this like overly simplistic view of like, hey, I'm going to just buy this house and it's going to start cash flowing for me immediately. And, basically somebody's just paying off a property and I'm gaining net worth, which is true at a very basic level. But the other thing is like that people don't think about is like, hey, what if somebody gets sick, right? What if somebody loses their job? And what if somebody just stops paying? What if like people don't think about that? It's like, well, yeah, but there are a ton of variables out there. It's like, it's not just like this easy thing where somebody's going to rent it immediately and they're always going to make their payment.
More often than not, people have looked at investment in this manner as passive income, and they want to be able to leave their job and pay for it with the passive income coming in, and not as a true long-term investment, banking on their future. It's really just how much passive income can I make so I can quit my job? Yeah. And that's not the only way to look at investment.
Yeah, and that's where they get frustrated, and that's where we have partners who end up almost mad at us because we're turning this C class, and that takes time because you probably are going to evict 50% of the complex or whatever, and then you have pretty significant repairs that have to be made, and they want to take draws in the first quarter.
Yeah, there's no way.
And especially if you syndicate, I think it's really important to make sure that every person in that syndication has the right expectation for the type of property you're buying. Because if you have someone like that that's expecting passive income in that first quarter or second quarter, and then all of a sudden there's nothing there, they're going to be upset. And really, you just haven't set the right expectations for the type of property that you're buying.
Well, I would say it's across the board. We used to have the discussion with real estate agents all the time where it's like, hey, you're not going to be making like a 6-figure income out of the gate,
Right.
right? It's going to take some time to build that business. And very similar situations. Like, look, this is a long game. It's not get rich quick, but it is get rich slow.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, like right now we're just happy if we're covering our debt. I mean, that's the goal right now is can we like cover all our expenses, cover our debt, we're solid.
Yeah.
And the appreciation though is, I mean, for example, the ones that we sold, 2020, 2021, we owned those. And this is kind of a ridiculous example because of what happened in the market at that time.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, we made like we doubled our investment in 18 months on those. They never really cash flowed in that time period, but when we sold, we made 100% ROI. And really our whole portfolio is sitting at that mark. So still like we don't have a ton of cash in the bank. We're not taking huge draws. We're okay with that because that's not where we're at, but our equity is huge,
Yeah. Same story here. I mean, of our 65 doors that we got up to, there were 30% of them probably didn't cash flow at all. But they appreciated insane during COVID. And so that's where you're making your money. And that's okay if you plan to hold it.
So how much are you dealing with talking about taxes on all this stuff? Is that a big part of what you're doing as well in terms of like establishing the right tax structures or talking to your CPA all the time and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. And constantly trying to figure out, so the best thing to do when you sell is 1031, which is an exchange that you do. It has to be a like exchange and it can't be related. So like I can't sell from one of our LLCs and buy another LLC's property and 1031 that doesn't work. It has to be somebody that's not related to you. But when you do that, you avoid capital gains until the properties finally sell, which the goal would be down the road when my tax bracket is much lower than it is right now, or you pass it on to your kids or whatever. We've not done a 1031 yet because we paid some taxes and paid off our line so we could keep doing what we do. But definitely, I actually just was talking to a friend of mine who has a large portfolio and does a lot. And he'd never done a 1031 and is selling a big part of his portfolio and was looking at like a $500,000 tax bill. And I was like, why are you not going to 1031? And, well, there's nothing to buy at 8%. Well, there is. And if you buy today, and Brandon, this is kind of what we talk about on the real estate side, like buy today and refinance in 24 months. And if you can cover your debt service at 8%, in 2 years at 6%, you're going to cash flow, So rather than pay that $500,000 tax bill, like go ahead and buy at 8%, pay the extra interest for 18 months, and then put yourself in a really good position. So there's lots of strategy that you should be aware of, and always. I mean, I'm constantly like, how can I expense this, move that, trade this, so that we're getting income and avoiding taxes. And it's not, my kids all the time are like, Mom, you're like scamming. Like, is that tax fraud?
No.
And I'm like, no, this is actually, the tax code was written for this. I mean, it's that the majority of Americans don't know how to use it. So.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's a challenging, because I think people don't realize it's like, man, as a business owner, how you're doing taxes you have to have a base level of understanding and, expertise and like, hey, how does all of this work? Right. And how do
it does. Like, don't be the expert. That's not what I'm the expert at, but I make sure I've got people on my team that do know.
Yep. Absolutely. So how is it different today than when you started investing? What's different about the business?
Well, I can't find anything for $20,000 anymore.
Doesn't exist. That's right.
Doesn't exist. No. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. I think more than ever, it's been important to have multiple strategy options. We try to do that with everything that we buy. Is there something different? Whether it's like, okay, make it a short-term rental. Well, now the short-term rental market is not very great, so let's just put it back to long-term, and it's going to do better as a long-term rental. Do we renovate it and turn it into a duplex? I mean, just constantly looking at different strategies, not being stuck in whatever idea I had when I bought 5 years ago. That may not be the right thing to continue doing or the right thing to continue looking at today. But I mean, the biggest thing is there's still stuff to buy, but you've got to be willing to shift your pro forma a little bit and pay more for it. And I don't know. I'm not super excited about the investment market right now because of that appreciation piece. Like the appreciation piece is so important to me, and walking in with a high amount of equity is so important to us. And that's really hard to do right now because stuff is listed so high still.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how your market is. I know in our market, there are so many eyes on Nashville that it's impossible to find a deal now. So what I've done is shifted to go make relationships with developers. And so before, just as a building or whatever's getting approved, I'll go buy 6 units and they're not even going to be finished for 3 or 4 years. And so they'll pre-sell them now at a rate, and then they'll go live in 4 years for, at 30% more than that. And then you can choose to sell it or hold it at that point.
that's great. Yeah. Yeah, we're going a lot. We're looking more and more in outside markets too, getting outside of the metro areas. We finally bought something. Mid 2020 was the last time we bought something, until like May, I think, of this year. And we got some 3 bed, 2 bath townhouses, for about 55 a piece. I was like, whoa, this is like old school prices,
Yeah.
But they're probably 35 minutes north of Knoxville. Not terribly far, but just far enough that, the prices were still worked with our pro formas.
So you are saying the word pro forma. So for those listeners who may not know what that is, can you explain what it is and how that plays into your business?
Yep. A pro forma is just, I think it's best described as a plan for the property or the investment. You're
Like
going to put this
a
much.
business plan for that property? Okay.
We use a spreadsheet. It's a plug and play that I actually think I got it from a class that I took back in the very beginning. So we plug in like our purchase price, or the total debt that we're going to be carrying on it. And then it goes across 5 years. And we start with the current gross rent and increase by whatever percentage we think we're going to increase by. Same thing with expenses. And you get your ROI and, your net cash, at the bottom. And so, we use that on every deal and just plug in the numbers, play with the numbers. Like if it does this, this is what this is going to look like. If it does this, it'll look like this. And that's been, kind of our Bible, I guess, when it
Yeah.
comes to making decisions.
So you're taking an extremely formulaic approach, which there are sometimes, like I've worked with investors who are just getting in and they kind of are making emotional decisions. They're like, well, this could be cute, if we did
Yeah.
this or whatever. And it's like, yeah.
Well, one of the worst things I hear people talk about is like whether or not they would live there. And I'm like, I wouldn't live in 95% of this,
Right.
but I'm not living there. That's not why we bought it. Don't think about it like that. There are a lot of people who want to live here.
Yeah, exactly. So did you ever do any like Airbnb stuff as a part of your investment? And what did that look
Yeah.
like? And do you still do it?
Yeah, we've got about, I think we're about 20 short-term rental units that we own and manage. Ours are not vacation rentals, and I think that has been a really big part of our success. So right now, the vacation rental market is down, pretty significantly, and ours are not. I mean, we're down like 8% from last year. It's not anything significant, but everything that we have is in the Knoxville area, and it's really set up more for like a business traveler or a student or a weekend football visit. And because of the way we bought, we're able to keep our nightly rates much lower than our competition. And I'm constantly evaluating. We keep our rates lower, but our occupancy is probably 20% higher. Now it's sometimes 40% higher than other units on the market. And so even though our rate is lower, our gross income still is higher, than our competitors. and that's worked well for us. I mean, we very rarely have a vacancy
Oh, wow.
on our short-term units.
Which is rare. Yeah. Right now, but just because about how you, where you place them in the market.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm an investor or I'm a brand new person that wants to invest, like what would you tell someone that wanted to get started today? It's like, hey, I want to get on this path towards investing. What do I do?
There's a lot of things. That's a great question. I think connect with people who have done it. So, like I'm not going to take nutrition advice from somebody who's overweight and out of shape, right?
Right.
And I think so many times, like you hit on the Instagram, reels about investing. And there's one Clay actually sent me, my husband sent me yesterday. And it's this like influencer that is talking about bury your family on your property because then it'll be a cemetery and you don't have to pay property taxes on it. and like, so yes, that
What?
is sort of true, but your property has to be zoned a cemetery.
Yeah.
Like you can't just go bury a body and not pay taxes.
Wait, so what you're telling me is that like Instagram isn't the best place to get your real estate advice? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
In 60 seconds or 90 seconds? Yeah.
Yeah. But even like, I mean, there's some big organizations that do like classes and we absolutely went through Rich Dad Poor Dad and their education arm and learned a lot there. But I think the biggest thing is like, make sure that whoever you're going to learn from has the same values and the same strategy ideas and the same end result that you want. Because if you want appreciation and equity, but you're being mentored by someone who's all about cash flow, you're going to end up frustrated and not meeting your goals or vice versa. So I really think the biggest thing is surrounding yourself with people that can lead you and help connect you with different relationships, because the relationships are the most important thing, but make sure that they're the right people and the right relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, one last question about the property management, because I run into this a lot with real estate agents, and they want to do property management or want to get into it. There's some legal barriers there for sure, but what would you tell someone that's wanting to get into property management or says, I think I want to go get 15 doors and manage them?
Well, make sure that you're licensed if you're going to manage for other people, because it's technically not legal to do that. And then I really, the smaller management companies are struggling, I think, because there's a lot of money coming into this industry, buying up management companies, creating these big conglomerates. And there's good things and bad things with that. But 15 doors is really hard to manage, actually. You've got to have, for management to be smooth and not be a 24/7 job, because it is.
Yeah.
We have 24/7 coverage. Now it's not me and it's not my employees. We use call centers and we use, platforms and AI and all kinds of things. But at 15 doors, you're going to have a hard time affording all of the support to do that. And so you're going to end up working a 24/7 job. So, I mean, you've got to start somewhere, right? We all have to start somewhere. I think I would just make sure that you are really thinking long term. Everything that we do, we make sure is scalable. And if it's not scalable, it's not right, because I don't want to do something today and then when we add 100 doors, have to change everything we do to make this work.
Right.
So I think like, okay, manage 15 doors, but what's going to happen when someone brings you 50? Can you continue to maintain that? And if not, then I would be thinking that way before you take that step.
Yeah, I think it's not quite what people think it is, because, in the property management game, you're right, it's 24/7. And when somebody's air conditioning's not working, right, and it's 11 p.m., they want it fixed, or they at least want somebody to answer the phone, right? I mean, there's a lot more to it than people think, and it's really, really hard. And you're right. It's like, I think people go, well, I just manage a handful of them. I'm like, you got to have a full-time support team to be able to do
Or do
this.
it all yourself. And
Right.
at 15 Whereas you can't afford that, and so you're going to be doing it yourself.
Yeah, which sounds crazy to me. What else
Yeah.
what other questions?
No,
do you have?
I fully agree. I would say that that's probably the hardest bucket to manage, just because you don't have the affordability to go out and get resources that you need, or staff, and so you're stuck doing it yourself, and then it is a 24/7 job, and then you'll wash out pretty fast doing that. So I think that's you need to plan for a larger scale and how you get there, and how you get there fairly quickly if you're going to go that route.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as an investor, I mean, I think, you asked the question, Brandon, about somebody wanting to start a property management company, but I think as an investor, you have to, like, the other side of that is deciding, is self-management really worth it? Because you're going to save some money, but if you want to scale your investments and you're putting all your time into managing your existing portfolio, you don't have time to evaluate new deals. You don't have time to go look at properties or grow your investment portfolio, because you're just like spinning trying to manage what you already have. And so um, I think people talk about real estate being passive income, and it's really only, I mean, the closest you're going to get to passive income, and, shameless property management plug, call me,
Yeah.
but like the closest you're going to get to passive income is having a management company. If you don't have a management company, you do not have passive income. Don't lie to yourself.
Yeah.
And if you have a management company, all you've done is delegate. It should not be hands off. I don't ever have to worry about this again. Because no one, even my own company, like, we're exceptional. I mean, we have put so much time and money into our systems, our people, and we manage like investors, which I think sets us apart from other management companies, because that's how I think. But even at that, like, we miss the ball. We drop things, we forget about something, and there is no one that is going to care about your investment the way you care about your investment.
Yeah.
We do our best, and I think we get it right more than other companies, but I'm still not you. RL, if you brought me your properties to manage, I think we're going to do a great job, but it's just not the same. And so the investor that, like, hands off and doesn't look at his P&L, doesn't look at his rent roll, doesn't ask the right questions, don't be mad at your management company when something doesn't go right and you were completely hands off and thought you were just getting passive income, because that's really not, you're not stewarding that well. I think you can delegate most everything, but you really don't buy into the lie that, like, you're just going to get checks every month and don't have to think about it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that sort of idea is out there where people go, I just want it on a balance sheet and whatever, and I'll just review that occasionally. It's like, no, you need to take an active role in your investment portfolio.
When someone says they want to be an investor, that's what they always say, is like, I want passive income.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really not going to be there for a long time. Right. No. And then you're still, it's not passive until you get to a certain level and you've got it, but you're still going to have to be involved.
Just like anything else, just like a real estate career, you got to treat it like a business.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, okay. So I always ask this of our guests. So your 3 favorite books.
I think Rich Dad, Poor Dad has to be on the list.
Yeah, it has to be number 1. Yeah. Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay, wait. So I'm terrible. Clay will tell you I don't remember names of anything, including people.
Okay.
So I'm pulling up my Audible list so I can tell you, because I don't. I actually, it's funny. I used to read all the time, and then with kids and everything, that kind of fell off. And this year, one of my goals this year was to read a certain number of books, and I've far exceeded my goal, which is really exciting. I listen to them. I don't actually sit down and read. But so this year, my 3 favorite books, Good to Great, Start with Why, and
so that's Jim Collins for the first one, then Simon Sinek is a Start with Why?
Yeah, Simon Sinek, Start with Why. And then this was my all-time favorite one, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's all about negotiating. And oh my gosh, I'd be like driving and ready to go like fight somebody. I love it.
He has a pretty good masterclass too.
He does. Yeah, I like Chris Voss and his concepts. It's pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. Well, I think if we were just going to recap this, I would just say that there is really no easy road, right, to building an investment portfolio.
Really, to anything.
Right. Well, yeah, there's no easy road to anything. Yeah, exactly. You've got to take some time and energy and focus and really, treat it like a business. You've got to become a professional and you have to have some understanding in it. So there's not really a fast track to it. You've got to really take your time, know your business, and build it over time. I mean, that's it. How long do you think it would take somebody to build a really good investment portfolio?
Without like a partner like we have in a line of credit, I mean, gosh, I don't know, like 5 years,
Yeah.
maybe 7. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think
Yeah.
generally people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 5.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah, I think being patient and consistent, like do the things. And that was one thing I've been asked, we did the Rich Dad Poor Dad thing, and we signed up for some of their classes, and I went to those in Orlando and came home with all these actionable items. And it was fascinating to me because when I'm sitting in these classes, there were people in those classes that were there for like their third or fourth time. And of course the question would be asked, like, okay, who owns, what's your portfolio? And like at this point I had done some of the classes leading up to the one I was in, and I'm just a person of action. I mean, if you've earned my trust and now you tell me to do something, I'm just going to do it.
mm-hmm.
And so that's what I did. They said, do this. I did it. And so I got to this class. We had been investing for all of like maybe 4 months. And I'm in the class, and there's people who've been there for their second, third, fourth time and still don't own anything. And at that point, we had purchased our first mobile home park and we're flipping our first single family. And there's one difference, and it's just that I did it. So if you find the person you trust, find the education you trust, but then you have to do what they say.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to do what they say, don't expect to get the results that they tell you you're going to get.
It's funny, that was very similar. So Nick McLean was on $1 Million Agent, author, and he said the same thing. He's like, I read so many books. The difference that I had was I implemented what I read.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like you can take in all the knowledge you want, you can do all the classes, you can read, but unless you implement, what do you have?
Yeah. I mean, even from a coaching perspective, it's interesting to me. It's like people, they get involved, they have dreams, they have goals or whatever. And it's like, well, you're not doing the things.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You just have to execution.
Really do
is
anything.
Just do anything. Yeah, that's
just
right.
Take one step.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I tell our team. We're constantly trying to instill, empower them to make decisions and not have to come to me to ask, can I do this or whatever. And I tell them over and over again, I would rather you make a decision and fail. We can clean it up. There's very few things you can do that I'm going to be like, oh, you really effed this up.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to happen, but I'm going to be more irritated and frustrated if you ask me over and over again and just don't do anything than if you come to me and say, hey, I did this and I'm not sure it was the right thing to do. I'm probably going to celebrate, and then we'll clean it up later if we have to, but like, just do something.
Yeah. Well, we say the same thing. It's like, bring the solution, and then we'll tell you if it's right or not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's true of anything, though. Even watching kids play sports, if they're not sure exactly what to do, they just kind of freeze.
Yeah.
Well, like, just do something really hard, and then we'll work on it later.
Exactly.
But it's all aspects of your life.
Well, Katie, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Any final words of wisdom?
No, just do it.
Just do it.
Do something.
Just do it. Just do something. Take the steps. Take action.
We're going to go with the Nike logo today.
I love it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Katie, that was awesome. Thank you so much for taking some time to be with us today. Give us a peek behind the curtain and to what it takes to build an investment empire. So thank you so much. We really, really appreciate you.
Thanks for your time.